Welcome to the Waymaker Summit podcast studio. I'm excited about my next guest. It's Dr. David Montgomery, a board-certified cardiologist. Dr. Montgomery, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be with you. Great to be with you.
Good to have you.
Yeah.
Now, tell us, you do this thing, it's called Prevent Clinic.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, Prevent Clinic, we actually say Prevent Clinic,
Prevent.
like defense, because it's all about getting to people before things happen, right? Before the heart attack happens, before the stroke happens. And now, as I expanded the clinic, before other things happen in general medicine. So it started 5 years ago. So we're celebrating our anniversary this year, where I decided to move away from a large cardiology group in Atlanta, start my own practice with the idea of doing something different, right? When I was in training and in practice, it was very clear that we were missing some very key things that people were asking for. And the tradition of medicine didn't lend to those things. You would find it in high-touch, sort of environments like hotels and restaurants. And you find that when people enjoy a sort of, a kind of service, that they're more likely to come back. Well, now think about this. What I'm trying to do is stop you from having a heart attack or stroke, but you're not coming. So if I can blend some of the things that we learn across disciplines, across industries, and put it together, meld it with medicine, maybe I can attract more people to get their hearts checked, and now the rest of their body's checked. So last year we opened a family medicine arm of the practice. It acquired some space across the hall, and now we've got two very busy doctors over there, and we're really happy that people in Atlanta and surrounding areas are coming to get themselves checked out.
There was so much in what you just gave me that this interview is not going to jump all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick up on all of it.
Yeah.
You're in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Why are you in Atlanta?
That's a great question. I believe that everything happens exactly the way it should. But to answer your question a little bit more cleanly, I was recruited from Chicago, Northwestern, down to Atlanta to join the Piedmont Heart Institute very heavily. And so they made it very attractive. And so that's why I'm in Atlanta. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So you were here at Northwestern.
Yeah. So grew up, born and raised, south side of Chicago, went to Percy Julian High School, went down to Morehouse for college, came back and did all of my training. I did a PhD at UIC, then crossed town to Northwestern to do medical training, fellowship, blah, blah, blah. And as I was looking for jobs, the Chicago market was just saturated. And I was looking around, and actually my then girlfriend, but now wife, found this great opportunity, and here we are.
I want you to talk about that for a minute, because as people think about the medical profession, it just seems like doctors always work. But you said you had to look, it was saturated, so you had to look for a job, even as a doctor as you are. Talk about what that experience is like.
Yeah, no, doctors do always work. We really love to do that. I don't know too many doctors who don't love to, do what they're doing. So we work all the time. We really do. But the market for cardiology, particularly non-invasive preventive cardiology, was saturated in the sense that the salaries, for example, just to be frank, right, the salaries that they were offering just didn't make sense to me, because I had two different moonlighting jobs and was kind of making what they were offering for a starting salary. So it wasn't attractive for me to just kind of stay and do that. It was kind of almost like just a lateral move, and I had really great training. And lo and behold, there were other places outside the state that were looking for people who have my experience, and that's what happened.
Now, you went to Julian, and then you went to Morehouse,
Yeah.
and then you went to medical school. Where'd you go to medical school again?
Northwestern.
Northwestern.
Feinberg.
So for most people who really have to appreciate this, and I do,
Yeah.
Talk about your experience at Julian,
Yeah.
and then Morehouse, that leads you to be the cardiologist that you are now.
Well, we go even before that, right? I mean, it's my mom, right? At the end of the day, my mom was a single mom of three. I was the youngest, and she just made sure that there was a platform and an environment to be and have whatever you could conceive. And I know it sounds trite, but that's exactly the message that she imbued, and put us in places that also echo that message. And how critical is that for the first message that you hear to be, you can do whatever it is. So by the time I had gotten to Percy Julian, it was just a matter of steps and evolution and me learning and all that. That I was going to do it was already in there. And I had started saying I was wanting to be a doctor around 10, maybe 9, but I think it's 10. I argue with my sister all the time about it. So about 10 years old, I want to be a doctor, Don't know why. No doctors in my family that I knew at the time. Turns out that I had a distant cousin who turned into, is an ophthalmologist, but I didn't know that. My pediatrician wasn't particularly interested in me, so that wasn't it. But it was something in me, and I think, I think depending on what you believe, I think it was in there when I was born, right? This is your purpose and where my passions came from. My friends started calling me Doc before I graduated high school because I was doing Doc stuff. Like I'm always, there's a notebook at my friend's kitchen table, and I would just go to and just practice my signatures. We go to his house. I'm like, why am I going to his house to practice my signature? My signature has evolved. But anyway, I was doing that. Dr. David Montgomery. Talk about putting it into the universe. And I'm thinking back, like I didn't know what I was doing back then. But when I think back on that story, I was feeding the universe exactly what I wanted to do. It's like LeBron James. And you hear those, you see those videos when he's like, yeah, I'm going to be the greatest dude ever, right? And he's like the greatest, Michael Jordan. But second, third, whatever you want to say. But you get what I'm saying? Like I was putting it into the universe. I'm going to be a doctor. And then Morehouse, right? So Morehouse changed a little bit for me because then science came in there. So, I almost left Morehouse without meeting my mentor, Dr. David B. Cook, who was my physiology professor. He introduced me to basic science research, where the cutting edge happens in real time. And so it kind of changed what my thought was about how I was going to become a physician. And so an academic physician or a physician scientist. I did a PhD before going to medical school, and here we are.
So in getting to where you are, even with you putting it into the universe by signing your name in high school as doctor,
Yeah.
talk about some of the challenges that you had along the way, because one of the themes in this conference, this summit, is about getting beyond uncomfortability
Yeah.
for growth.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the times that you may have become uncomfortable in your journey.
Yeah, no, there were a lot. And so I distinctly remember being dismayed by the barriers that I saw being placed in my way for reasons that I couldn't make sense of. So at many of the steps in my education, there felt like there was an animus, like some kind of, I don't know what it was, like, why are you stopping me? So for example, it turns out, I didn't know this in grade school, it turns out, and I was terrible until 4th grade. 5th grade, I started getting really good grades. Remember when we used to get E's, G's, S's, and U's? You remember that? Okay. Yeah, you guys don't remember that.
I remember we used to get E's. Those other ones weren't acceptable.
Well, but so I got S's and a couple of U's. So it was like, I don't know I don't know what my mom thought, but I'm thinking back like, yeah. Well, I actually know what she thought. And here's what she used to tell me, just side commercial break. She said, she would slide the grade, you know what to do. My mom never did all the rah, rah, rah. When you do all the rah, 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 is that gonna work? Didn't have to happen for me. So I started getting really good grades after 5th grade, and it turned out that I was high on the grades and the points. I was high enough to be the salutatorian of the class. I was 3rd in the line, right? So valedictorian, salutatorian, and I was the 3rd guy. I was just happy to be the 3rd guy, knowing where I'd come from. And it was told to me much later, after we graduated from high school, that the teachers deliberated and said, no, we're gonna let Jennifer McLaughlin have the salutatorian. Well, this was already in high school where we just random teachers, I didn't do anything to you. What's the ad? We just feel like we're putting these barriers in my way. So I started to see some of that uncomfortability and become used to being uncomfortable. Well, you're gonna put this barrier, I'm gonna go around. You're gonna do this, I'm gonna go around. You're not gonna help me put on the Martin Luther King assembly? We will do it ourselves. We were students at Percy Julian High School. We did not have the same help as young guys. We had a group of guys, and we had a club called the Gents, that we were trying to distinguish ourselves at that time in the 1990s. And they just said, we're not gonna help you, do it all by yourself. We had the best assembly ever, right? Henry O. Hardy came. We had like the choir, my sister sang. It was like great. Anyway, all these barriers. And then you started to get this confidence. I can actually do stuff even though you put barriers in my way. Oh yeah, this harkens back to what my mom said. You can do it. And so, I can just go down the line of steps. And it's probably, if you look at it circumspectively, I probably did some stuff. I'm not like some saint. So I probably did some stuff to, provoke a little bit of, animosity, like not dimming my light or whatever you're supposed to do to make other people feel good. And I hadn't learned all of that stuff. And just barriers and barriers and barriers. And we could keep going. But I think the point is, once you build up a muscle memory for conflict and opposition, you learn not to take it personally, right? You get to see it when it's coming. You have performance psychologists call it implementation intention. It's just a if-then situation. What if something happens? What am I going to do then? Oh, you're just developing that. So they all may be better. It was all supposed to happen, right? So,
talk about some of the you went to an HBCU, went to Morehouse. What was that like? And talk about the impact of being at an HBCU on you then, on you now, and on you at Northwestern.
Yeah, I don't know anything else, right? So I had a fantastic time at Morehouse, right? I mean, I come out, like I said, I did pretty well in high school. I get to Morehouse, across the street, literally, is Spelman College, and I lost my mind, right? So my grades, they kind of went down a little bit, but I got it together. But I don't have a comparison. I had a fantastic education. I was pushed by professors. My career evolved into something bigger, better, preparing me for my task, what I was to do in life. And somebody said, "Oh, why did you go to Morehouse? Why did you go to wherever you went? It's a great school. Like, what are you talking about?"
There were tremendous choices other than Morehouse before you decided that.
Yeah,
some good,
no,
some bad.
absolutely. No, I turned down full scholarships to go to Morehouse.
So what led you to that? Why?
It was the feeling. It was the feeling. When I visited Morehouse, and that happened to me every other step. We don't talk about that feeling nature in us. We all have it. In fact, we dumb it down and we call it names and, oh, don't be like that, don't be emotional, and it's such a part of who we are. Guys, we tend to call it a different name. We call it like ego. No, it's your emotions, bruh. And they actually will give you a lot of information when you start feeling people. When I became a real physician, not an accredited physician, not a credentialed, when I really started healing people, I stopped seeing them. Let me see my patients. And I started feeling them. It's a different thing. So when I kind of said, hey, I'm in touch with this part of myself, which we all have, and there's nothing wrong with it, I could walk into a place and I can feel it. I can walk into a room and know when something's just not right. You can tell. We all have it, right? It may not be honed. Like, our dogs smell more than we do. That's just because they've been honed as species. You can walk into a room and you can tell if somebody's been talking crazy about you. Like, it doesn't have to just go quiet. You just, spidey senses are tingling. I've tuned into that. It makes me a better physician. So I felt it when I walked in on the campus, and I knew I was going to Morehouse. Turned down the money. I was like, I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't either, and here we are.
Here you are. Let's talk about what you're going to tell us while you're here.
Yeah.
Because we, as black men, have a reputation of not paying as much attention to our health as we should.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, some of the things that really harm us are heart attacks and strokes.
Yeah.
What should we be doing?
Yeah. So, Dr. Hollowell and I are going to zoom out a bit. And I think heart disease is the number one problem still. There are different forms of it. But when we zoom out, the message that we're going to give will apply to everyone, because not everyone's going to have a risk for heart disease or have heart disease. And that message is, have you decided to have a strategy for your health? We have a strategy for finances, hopefully. You've got a business strategy. Some of the entrepreneurs have one of those. You've got a strategy how you want to move up the ladder in life. Some people have a relationship strategy. I'm going to go to the Waymaker Summit, and I'm going to meet that per beep, 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 and they have planned it all out. They know what the ins and outs are. But have we had sat down and made a strategy for our health. Everybody's strategy is different. It's as different as a fingerprint. Because what you can eat, I may not be able to eat. What you can move, I may not be able to move. How you sleep, rest, mindful, all that stuff, I may not be able to do it. So we're going to zoom out and challenge men to sit down and say, if I'm going to do all these things to be better, I better be healthy enough to benefit from it, to reap the fruits of my labor. And the only way to do that is to be mindful, deliberately, about my health. And here's the thing. If you think about all the billionaires, right, and I'm going to make sure we say this to everybody, the billionaires are asking themselves right now is how can my life is great, the billionaires are saying, the Robert Smiths, the Oprah Winfreys, the Jeff Bezos. My life is really good. How can I get some more of this? How can I run that thing back over and over again? Yeah, why not, right? Like this? And how are they doing that? They're making a plan to do it. You can't just happenstance on living forever without disease that takes you out. You've got to be deliberate about it. And that's what we're going to challenge men to do today.
So it's an interesting thing when we think about heart attacks and strokes and all these other things, because so much of what happens is not because of what I did yesterday.
Right.
It's what I've done over these past 20, 30, 40, 10 years.
That's right.
And so when you're talking to people and helping them develop what this plan might be, how deep does that get? Does that get into food? Does that get into work?
100%.
Does that get into, there's some things that we can't control that may be in our genes.
That's right.
But we at least have to know that.
That's right.
Know how to ward against it.
Right.
So all these things are part and parcel of what it is that you all will be presenting to these men.
Honorary MD, because that's exactly it. Like all of that is important to incorporate. And the current framework for medicine doesn't give us time to do that, which is why I went off on my own and started to practice. So that I can practice, this is what I meant, so I can practice the way people need to get what they need to be successful in their health. But all of those things are really critical. The question is, what is it for me? Everybody's different. That's why I tell people all the time, one size doesn't fit all. We do that all the time. We've got to go and hire people, outsource. Let me have somebody who's going to help me figure this out. Let me get a coach over here. Let me have a physical therapist over here. Let me have a physician that tells me. Put it together to develop a strategy. You have a banker for your business strategy, You've got an accountant, right? You've got somebody who's going to build the building. It's the same process. Do that for your health, and that's a really important key.
Well, we've covered a bunch of things. We've covered, one, what you do and how you got to do it. And as we look at these men who are here today, some young, some older, really curious about to get to where you are, to be a doctor as you are, to think back to you signing your name on the paper and dreaming at 10 years old about what you would be, what advice would you give some of these young men on how to hit their goals and how to reach the things in their lives that they may not even know yet what they want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I love the idea of zooming out. And if you don't see it, you can't be it. And it starts with the vision. Every single thing that we love. I mean, these microphones, somebody saw that I can design this a lot better. I won't get the friction and won't move around. I won't hear the table. Somebody saw that first. See yourself as the healthiest individual you can be for as long as you can be that. Once you start there, then the ways and the means will naturally come, right? I got to set a vision for, some people want to lose 45 pounds. Other people want to get off of a blood pressure medicine. Some people don't even know what they have, right? Because they haven't been evaluated. Back up, take a look at what you want your health to look like. But in order to do that, you've got to sit and consider it. When I was young, I didn't think about that. You don't think about life and longevity when you're young. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Now it's time for us to say, hey, there's consequences. I've got to put away the childish thing of not worrying about my life, I used to jump off garages and do all this crazy stuff, right? I'm not going to die, So that was a lot there, but zoom out, visualize it first, and then the ways and means come after that.
There's a lot there, but you even gave us scripture. So giving us scripture that just does it all.
Passing the plate, yeah.
gets to make it all happen, gets to make it all go.
Yeah.
This has been a wonderful time to have an opportunity to talk with you here, and looking forward to your presentation here at the summit. It's a great place to be, a great way to be, and a great way to help men be men.
That's right.
Move forward.
Yeah.
Dr. Dave Montgomery, thank you so much.
Glad to be a part.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely.